Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Gedunk. I'm here with Bobby Jones. And we are just having a fun little conversation today. We actually have a show planned for you, but we've been kind of riffing for a couple minutes talking about the sports landscape. And, we've got the NBA finals coming up, two brand new teams. We're talking a little bit about sports gambling, a couple of facts that I did not know. Bobby, tell the group what we were just chatting about.
So people who like to bet on sports, people who like to do all these things to make money, to have a little extra things going on the side, because you need more drama in your life. Professional sports are easier to bet on than, say, college sports. Now, for those who are watching overseas, college sports in America is a unique thing. It's like pro, but it's not. I mean, these kids get paid now, but they're not still considered professionals. And what I mean by that is, for the longest time, kids would just play just for the love of the school, the love of their neighborhood, where they're from, etc. So the reason it's more difficult to bet on college is because the kids that are playing, you're talking about 17, 18, 22-year-old kids, they are not treated as professionals. They don't see the thing as professional. The emotional immaturity that they still have to work through, everything that it takes to be a professional at anything, they have not fully developed yet. And so emotions can come in big time. I mean, when you look at college football kickers, for example, the amount of field goals that they miss. Why? Because they feel the pressure. If you're at a large school with 60,000 people going to school there and you miss that kick, everybody on that campus is going to know who you are. And there's no money to insulate you from it, right? And so the mental toughness that you develop as you get older may or may not be there. So when you look at the March Madness basketball tournament, men's and women's, you see these upsets all over the place because the team that's supposed to win may, completely discount the team they're playing against because they lack the maturity to be a professional and treat everybody equally. And then the kids that are underdogs are like, yeah, man, I want to play. They didn't give me a scholarship. They didn't give me a shot. And that emotion raises their level of play. And then they beat some blue blood team like a Kentucky or Duke or something like that when no one expected it to happen. And it happens every year, as opposed to the NFL. Or most importantly, Major League Baseball, where I've been saying this, I'm a Braves fan, but the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to win the World Series. They have spent more money than anybody else. They have the best roster, the best players, and if they stay healthy, they're going to kill everybody. That's professional.
Freak of nature, man.
Shohei Ohtani is the biggest freak athlete I think I have ever seen, and that's saying something, saying that we grew up with Michael Jordan and we grew up with all these other superstar athletes. He's a
true He's a true five-tool guy. And he doesn't have five tools. He has five, so when we talk about baseball, the five tools, right? It's like arm strength, defense, speed, hitting for contact, hit for power. And Shohei does all of that. And his pitching alone is maybe top 10 in MLB. And then his offense is
unreal.
It's unreal. One. Right.
He leads off for the Dodgers, and the man leads the league in home runs. I mean, only two people who I could even see doing that is him, and then down here in Atlanta, we have Ronald Acuna, when healthy, can do that. But Ronald doesn't pitch. You know what I'm saying? Shohei's about to start pitching here and do all of that. I mean, dude, it's let me put it this way. Well, look at it like this. Going back to the original point, when you watch high school kids play sports, right? And you see the emotional roller coaster, the parents go through the emotional roller coaster with them and stuff like that, right? You may have a kid that's a great talent but have a bad game. Why? Because maybe his girlfriend broke up with him that day. And it has a super impact on what he does Friday night on a football field or on a basketball court or whatever, right? By the time you are a 28-year-old professional getting paid millions of dollars, you have learned how to lock in and zone into the game, and everything else is in the background. Hell, you may have people you've hired to handle all that other stuff, right? And so when these people are talking about, I want to gamble, this, that, and the other, first of all, I just think it's crazy because sports is the greatest real life soap opera we've ever had. But when I look at certain leagues and I look at the ages of the kids, I'm like, dude, there's no way I'm going to spend my hard-earned money trying to figure out if this kid had a good week and got a great grade on an exam, or he bombed the test and his girlfriend broke up with him, and now all of a sudden I expect them to go into, I don't know, Michigan's big house in front of 100,000 and win a game. No, can't do it.
Dude,
can't do it.
This just made me think of like the funniest thing. Okay, so maybe we can find this clip, but I don't know. Have you seen this? So Monte Teo, right? Famously, Monte Teo got catfished. It was probably 10 years, 12 years ago, actually. So he's a college kid. He's like this all-star, all American linebacker at Notre Dame. Everyone, first round NFL draft pick. But he gets catfished in by some, scam artist who convinces them that he has a girlfriend, and he unfortunately does sort of some media, talking about his girlfriend. And then the scam artist had said, your girlfriend died or whatever. And so he talks about how this woman who was his girlfriend died, and it's very emotional for him. Anyway, the point of my story is there's this clip floating around of Monte Teo recently where he's like, it's so funny, dude. He's like, they ask him some question, and he's like, this may surprise you, but I haven't Googled myself since 2013 for obvious reasons. I was like, good for you, man. That is a great,
Huh? Yeah.
That is a great sense of humor. And, and
he's got to protect his mental health on that, dude, because he got dragged.
Yeah, I always thought it was interesting with track and field. Like, when I would go to a track meet, there was not a lot of mystery. I mean, you had to be real close to someone, right? It was like, hey, his PR is 4:15 in the mile and mine's 4:20. He's going to win, right? Like, there wasn't like, we're going to line up and run the race, and I don't know, maybe you could trip or something like that.
Right.
But track and field, it was there are not a lot of surprises really in track and field until you get so close.
Right. And typically people, when they do bet, they bet on the sprints events, the 100 meters, the 200, maybe the 400 and 4x4s, because like you said, that difference in performance is so small, where if you have a bad performance, an off performance, it can change things. What I've always loved about track and field was, you're not racing against the person, you're racing against the clock. And so that standard changes everything. And then, you may be in an environment where the competition is so good that it helps you PR, right? That I always thought that is the coolest thing about track and field, is the competition is like a power boost to what you've already know you can do. You've already proven you can do, which is why when you look at track and field and swimming to a similar extent, the Olympics are so epic because the environment is so amped up. Right? You know what you're supposed to do based on the times that you've done leading up to it. But then all of a sudden, oh, wait, this dude next to me, he's supposed to be faster than me by 2/100ths of a second in a 100-meter dash. Not today, he's not. You know what I'm saying? Then both happen to go and PR or may break a world record. The world records get broken, in the track and field competitions where you're right next to each other faster than, say, long jump, shot put, javelin, because you're right next to the competition that pushes you to go faster.
Dude, did you watch, I know you're biased against us wimpy little distance runners, but did you watch the 1500 by any chance, the 1500 final at the last Olympics?
Yes. I remember that.
Awesome, dude. So, Jakob Ingebrigtsen is this Norwegian guy, expected probably to break the 1500 world record, which is one of the longest standing world records. El Guru said it back in maybe it was the late 90s, but no one's sniffed it for 30, 40 years. And then in the Olympic final, you've got Jakob Ingebrigtsen from Norway, who's this all-world 5,000 meter guy. Very cocky. Josh Kerr, who trained at University of New Mexico, but I think he's from the UK. And then, you've got a couple Kenyans in there, and then you've got these Americans who are expected to, sort of round out the top 8 kind of thing. And the 1500, if you ever need like, if you wake up in the morning, you're like, I need some inspiration, go watch the men's 1500 final. It is sick. You've got this kid, Cole Hawker from Indiana. I think he's only like 23 or something, but he's in his second Olympics already. He hangs with these guys, and it all comes down to the last 75, and then Hawker like sneaks by on the inside, and then you get a second American taking bronze with Yari McGoof, and there's a third American, Gabe Kessler, who is super young too.
Yep,
I think
remember him. Yep, he's super. Yeah, he's got a lot of pressure he put on himself by doing what he did.
Yeah.
It was like there's some high expectations for that kid.
Really cool event. But yeah, track and field, I think the most likely, what's your thought? But I think the most likely sports upset you're going to get would be a team sport of some sort, less so in individual sports, although it does happen, but a team sport where you have, like a true team sport, like a football, like a soccer match where you've got 11 people and the ball's kind of all over the place.
I would agree. I think the more people on the field participating, the greater the chance of the upset. And here's why. The psychology behind it to me is kind of opposite what you think. If you're in an individual sport, it's like, hey, I control what happens, blah, blah, blah. That's it. But I think when you have more people on the competition field, the variables increase, right? And those variables for people not to do what they're supposed to do increases, right? Yeah. So you have to have a hive mind in order to perform as one. To get many to perform as one is harder than one to do many things, in my opinion. And so when you look at it from like football, that's 11 people on one side of the ball. Soccer, 11 people on one side of the ball. Baseball, 9 people on one side of the ball. Go and look at how many of those upsets occur in those sports. Basketball, not as much because you only got 5 on one side. And basketball is still a sport where one super player can dominate, i.e. Michael Jordan, i.e. LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, etc.
LeBron went to 9 finals in a row or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous. Now, granted, he didn't have a lot of the horsepower to win a lot of those, but the fact that they even got there was singularly because of his talent, right? I remember they used to call it LeBron and the LeBroneers and the Jordan and the Jordaneers.
Yeah.
But in football, as great as Patrick Mahomes was, going into last year, the Philadelphia Eagles had 11 dudes on defense that they put together and said, not today, not today, and they dominated the other 10 people on the field, which made Patrick Mahomes more useless than anything else.
How important is it to be a part of a team in life? I mean, we talk about a lot of stuff on this show, but being a part of a team, and this kind of translates through everything. I think number one, it's important psychologically for the individual. First of all, you get more done as a part of a team, right? You provide some value to the team. And I think it's really kind of hardwired in our nature to feel good when we're a part of a team. And that can be through employment. It can be through athletics. It can be through, your family really is a team. And
I think you're hitting that point. That's the point why it's important, right? Let me put it this way. Society is the ultimate team. And so when you play a team sport at a younger age, you are learning the fundamentals of becoming a productive member of society. That's why I think team sports are very important for young kids and as they become older and they mature into adults, because you quickly figure out in team sports, no matter how great you are, if you can't help other people come to that level too, then it's pointless. How many times have you seen that one kid on a basketball team or a soccer field that's unbelievably awesome, but the rest of the team is terrible around them? And then that kid starts to get frustrated and this, that, and the other. The parents get frustrated. And at that point, they have a decision to make. Do I sit there and try to help these other kids get better and work with them? Or do I go find a super team and try to join, which is what's happening now? Back when we were growing up, you stuck with your team for the most part, and you hope everybody gets better and you will work together and you will be together for a while, junior high, high school, etc. Now with the travel teams and the money that's involved in sports, you have kids who will not stick it out with their team and go and be somewhere else. But why do they do that? They take it from the example that the professionals have set. When LeBron James famously said, "I'm taking my talents to South Beach," when he did that, that made it okay for everybody who's talented to go link up with other people who were talented and leave everybody else behind. That's a different model than what Jordan went through, what Bird and Magic went through, what, hell, Barkley and Dominique Wilkins, these guys that didn't win championships because they didn't do that, right? They understood what it meant to build a team. When you look at the top of our leadership now, it's the same mentality. It's percolated all the way through. I'm not blaming LeBron for that, but I'm saying there's an individual mindset that is taken over when it comes to approaching teams instead of building them and enduring with them. It's like, let me go find the easiest route and then I'll call it a team, even though it's motivated by individual goals.
Well, when I think back on, my life and the stuff that I'm sort of most proud of personally, it really all has been participation in a team of some sort, right? It's been um, being on the track team at the Naval Academy. It's been being in the SEAL teams. It's been being part of a medical team during COVID. It's when we get a sick trauma that comes into the ER, like we had one a couple days ago. A young person went through the windshield, wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and we're working on this kid in the trauma bay, and it was smooth. It was like the techs get the IVs in, and the nurses, are getting the drugs out of the Pyxis, and where the residents getting the airway, and it's all people kind of working in concert. And you go home after a team experience like that, and it's really powerful. It's really that's a good day. That's a good day when you're a part of a team and it becomes and that team accomplishes something together. And I think a lot of what we've gotten away from is sort of teamwork, whether it's in society as a family or what have you. I mean, but I always have felt best about myself when I'm a part of a team that not necessarily is winning, but that is performing at a level that takes all of us to get there. And that's always been sort of the thing that, kind of goosed me the most about the military and medicine was, hey man, if you pay your bills on time and you provide for the team, you get to be a part of that. You get to touch that when that team is just firing on all cylinders, and it's a really powerful feeling.
No, not only is it a powerful feeling, it's a long lasting feeling too, right? So, that they have that hokey thing. I remember back in the 90s, team stands for together, everyone achieves more. I thought it was so hokey back then as a kid, but now I'm like, damn, it's spot on, because what your team is able to do in that trauma bay is literally save lives. If it was just you that received that kid, I don't know if you'd be able to pull it off as great as you may be, right? And now you're changing the trajectory of not just that kid's life, but the family's life, everybody else's life, because everybody brought their skill set. They knew their jobs and they executed, right? And so when you talk about, like I said, the military, going back to school when we were on track and playing football and all these other things, the greatest accomplishments of my life have never been singular. Whether it's being married and having kids, that is a team. That's the ultimate team sport. Whether it is accomplishing something that's worthwhile in society, I cannot think of anything that I truly value that was not accomplished through the mechanism of team.
Well, I think in a very real way, you have a pretty unique experience. I mean, what's it like on a ship? Like you're on your way with, so how many, I don't even know this shit, man. How many people are on like a ship?
Depending on the size of the ship, you're talking about a cruiser or destroyer, you're talking about 400, 300 to 500 people. Let's just say that's not even talking about the carriers or the large deck ships that have 1,000 to up to 5,000 on an aircraft carrier. And
Have you ever? Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm not saying the hardest thing that you have to do is to get everybody to work as one.
Yeah.
And understand the big picture. That's why the screening process to become commanding officers of ships, or like in my case, the gunboat squadrons that are spread out all over the world, is how do you think is one? Different time zone, different areas, different threats, blah, blah, blah. And think about it. If you're on a ship, let's just use, the optimal manning of a cruiser that has about 500 people on it. You're talking about kids from all over the country, hell, all over the world. Different backgrounds, different reasons for joining the Navy, different reasons for taking the jobs that they pick in the Navy. Mm-hmm. And guess what? When you sail into the Persian Gulf for the first time and you see all of these other navies there that may or may not be a threat to you, they don't give a damn about your background. They don't give a damn about this. They're like, why are you here, or what are you going to do? And you have to be one. And that one individual, that man or woman at the very top, the captain, has to not only impart what they want done, but they have to understand the strengths and weaknesses of 500 people collectively. And sometimes individually. It's unbelievably hard to do in my mind. Looking back on, I think we're crazy to do what we do. But it's hard.
Were you ever on a ship that, there was a morale problem, or maybe not even morale, but, there were teamwork problems, and could you notice a difference in the effectiveness of the ship?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When I started my XO tour on Anzio, my second in command tour on USS Anzio, I checked on board the ship, and a big scandal happened where the captain got fired within me being on board the ship like a week. I hadn't even taken over fully as XO. I was going through the turnover process. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I mean, immediately I saw from the day I stepped foot on the brow, something was up. Right. And so then we had to bring in a new captain who is awesome. Frank Castellano, who, if you've seen the movie Captain Phillips, he's the guy that was in charge of USS Bainbridge. He's the guy that came on board. So this man had dealt with high stress situations. He actually helped the ship, the USS Anzio, be built. He was a plank owner. And so it was personal to him. And he immediately got respect because he told people what the standard is and that we will do the job the nation has charged us to do. And I was his second in command. And then we had an unbelievable senior enlisted Command Master Chief, Cooper, who had taught leadership and ethics to all of the senior enlisted of the Navy. So we had this unique team of experience, this, that, and the other. And then I was the most inexperienced out of the three of us in the triad, but I was very, 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 very motivated. And the whole football player mentality, attack. And it worked out very well. Now, I will say this. You work very hard to get credibility with people that you lead, but it can all go away in one snap of doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And people don't really talk about that. And in the current environment that we're in politically and all this other kind of stuff, people are not talking about the credibility that we're losing with the leadership making the mistakes or making the policies or making the statements or doing the things that they're doing. And when I say it affects the team, in this case, the team's the country.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, I'm trying to remember, there were certainly, every organization has like a bottom 10%, right? And, it can be tough to that. We think that we're defined by the top 10%, and often we are, but you really can be dragged down by the bottom 10%. But like that bottom 10% that, your sailor who, I don't know, gets 3 DUIs or whatever, or that tech in the ER who, doesn't follow the standard, or the physician in the ER or whatever. I mean, every aspect of being a part of a team, the commonalities between an NFL team and a naval ship and a functioning emergency department, they all really sort of rely on this team functioning sort of, and it's not just that that's a better way to treat trauma victims or launch cruise missiles or whatever. It's like, it also gives something to the individual to be a part of that. There's something addictive about that for us. And yeah, and it's something that many people, maybe most people, you kind of lose when you stop playing sports in high school, or, stop being part of the club in high school or college, or whatever it is. And I wonder if some of what we see with young men being attracted to, the Maggie universe and all that sort of stuff is really them sort of wanting to be a part of something.
I think you hit it on the head.
Yeah.
I really think you nailed it on the head. I think part of the attraction that people have to fanatical groups in particular, so whether you're talking MAGA, you're talking white extremists, anti-Semitism, this, that, and the other, is the lack of a sense of belonging in their normal communities, right? When you are, especially a young man, you need two things to be successful, I think, in life. You need to have a cause and a crew. Something, a goal that you're trying to drive towards, and people who are like-minded around you. And when you don't have one or the other, what happens is anything comes in to try to fill that gap, right? You look at, for example, team sports. There has been a slight decrease of people playing team sports this generation here. Not as many play football, definitely, but not as many want to play soccer. Not as many want to play baseball. And what's happening is you see, basketball, you see foreigners, Europeans now coming into the NBA more. You see, baseball's reach has always been global, but I mean, now it's the floodgates have opened. You don't see the average American boy playing that sport as much as they do like in Curacao, the Caribbean, Japan, this, that, and the other, right? So there's this decline of that in the American sports space. And at the same time, you're seeing the rise in depression, the rise in violence, the rise in extremist groups attracting these people. I don't think it's a coincidence. I really don't.
I think you're right. I mean, if you're substituting Twitter for participation in a track and field events, like, that's the wrong decision,
Exactly. That's exactly. And that's what's happening. You have kids that are in their basements that just type away in the social media space where they create this reality where they're important. And here's how you know it's different. It's because they do it anonymously. It'd be different if you knew the first and last names of these people saying the stuff that they say, the hate and discontent that they sow. But no, they know what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
But they don't care. They need to fix the dopamine hit of being part and being important. So they come up with the screen names and this, that, and the other, and they comment anonymously. Now, when they're found out, those rare cases when they're found out, they drop off the grid. They apologize, drop off the grid because they realize they've now become a pariah. But while they were doing it, they felt way more connected to a society, even if the society was degrading the rest of society. They thought that was working.
There's something to unpack there because, a thing about MAGA, in addition to the culture war online stuff, right, is, and I'm not saying all of them, some of them are loud and proud, right, and hey, this is who I am. And while I vehemently disagree with those shitheads, at least they're using their real name, right? But there's an element, and I think it's sort of been reflected in everywhere from the polling of likely voters. You had a lot of Trump historically always overperformed the polls. And I think that is, at least in part, probably in large part, because people don't want to say on the phone that they're going to vote for Trump. But when you're in that ballot box, you can do whatever you want because it's anonymous. And so when you make something anonymous, people feel free to sort of let their, inner demons come out. And I think, for a topical point, I think that's what we're seeing with, with ICE and all these other organizations that are wearing masks. Like, since when did masked agents of the state fucking arresting people, right? Like, what, to serve and protect, right? Like, what about that is like, I'm going to put a bandana over my face and, dress like a shithead, but I've got body armor, so it looks cool. And then I'm going to roll up to the job site and, gang tackle like this poor Nicaraguan kid who's like roofing someone's house. And even if you're for deporting that Nicaraguan kid, do we really need to have anonymous agents of the state, doing that? And like back to what we're talking about, man. These guys are like, cool, I'm part of the team now. Like the team can be powerful in positive ways. It can be powerful in negative ways as well. And one of these negative ways is like, all it takes is, hey guys, we're going to wear masks because, it looks badass, or whatever their fucking reasoning is for wearing the masks is, it's terrible. Yeah.
I think I will say this. It's the exact opposite of what we've seen historically in America, right? Even when you look at law enforcement, even when they were persecuting people, you go back to the civil rights movement, you can go before that, you knew exactly who they were because they felt like they were in the right, even if they were wrong. Now, here's what I don't understand. The reason that these people are being masked, because they asked Homeland Secretary Noem this question. She's like, well, that's to protect them and the innocent. If you are actually doing what the people want and based on the law, right? Why would you hide yourself? Our normal police officers do not wear masks when they do their patrols. They don't need to. What's interesting is they have contracted out this federal law enforcement maneuver. There are people that work for ICE that are not full ICE agents. There are people who are being volunteered. And so what has happened is, because this goes to the mentality of, I want all the power, but I want none of the responsibility to deal with it with the Trump administration. Now they're able to just grab random people. And now the line is blurred where people will go just buy stuff and act like they're ICE, and people are being assaulted. There are reports up in Jersey, up in the Northeast, where there are women who have been assaulted by people claiming to be ICE, and they're not.
It's not even, that is fucked up and terrible.
It is.
For me, though, it's even more so the thing itself. Like, you should go, you and I, we're on a fucking podcast right now.
Yep.
My name is Dan Barr. Your name is Bobby Jones. I live in Vermont. You live in Georgia.
Yep.
We're fucking out saying this stuff in public. I've been saying it for 8 years.
Yep.
This is, it is a mark of a coward to cover your face and say that like there's some safety reason. There's a safety. You're a law enforcement agent. You're a cop. You carry a gun, like, everywhere you go. Like, what's the safety reason? Do you think that like the Nicaraguans who snuck over the border and are sleeping 12 guys in a house trying to make enough money to send back to Nicaragua, you think they're going to show up at the station and just bum rush you? Like, give me this fucking break. Like, these guys are cowards. They're
cowards.
Cowards.
And I will say this is part of the cruelty aspect of 100%. The current administration.
It's intentional.
Exactly. This is not about the functionality or the execution of these policies. This is the retribution and causing fear of people perceived to be enemies. It's more than just governance. It's retribution.
Yep.
It's retribution, and they want everybody to be scared. The fact that we had ICE raid a congressman's office here in the last week, right? The fact that people are bold enough to think that that's okay. Again, people who are listening, if the tables were reversed and you had left-wingers doing this in mostly red areas, we'd be on the verge of civil war right now.
Yeah, I can't imagine there wouldn't be, the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world, calling for violence.
Imagine if Biden sent people to raid her office.
Yeah.
Up in North Georgia.
Right.
How would that be perceived? How would that go over? Heck, I would argue that you may actually have weapons firing exchanged because of it, right? But here we are. It's the do as I say, not as I do mantra. Everything that we're seeing, and going back to the original point of team and then leadership within the team, You are seeing in less than 6 months this perverse change where we go from the country benefiting and saying, okay, innocent until proven guilty, to now hunt who we perceive to be guilty solely based on appearance, accent, this, that, and the other. And it happened like that. It didn't even take a year. It didn't even take a year because, again, teams, when put together, and the federal government, we can sit there and talk about all the things that's wrong with it, the bloatedness of it, blah, blah. But the federal government is the largest scale team that we deal with in America. That's what it is. Everybody has a role. But the team captain can affect the performance of that team more than anybody else. In this case, it's the president of the United States.
No, I think it's right. I think it's right. But it also speaks to a culture that has to exist within some of these organizations of weak individual leadership. And I would be shocked if Donald Trump, I mean, he could shock me, right? Like the start there. But I doubt that Donald Trump or Kristi Noem has issued some edict that all ICE officers are required to have a T-shirt over their face when they go out and arrest people. That is an individual, that is back at headquarters. That is some guy who's been doing the job for 20 years saying to some new agent, hey man, you might want to cover your face on this one, right? That is a fucking coward thing. Like, you're a coward if you do that. You are a coward. You have the guns, you have the badge, and now you're scared to show your face. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, these people are, who wears masks? The Klan wears masks.
I was about to say, I can tell you.
That's right. Like, what's so different,
No, nothing in my mind. And people are like, well, that's different. The Klan was illegal and this, that, and the other. These are legal representatives. I'm like, really? You need to go back and look at history. A lot of people that were elected officials were part of that organization.
And cops, right?
And cops and this, that, and the other. But I guess the thing that I keep coming back to, and I'm glad we're talking about teams, right? And teams can effectively do things that individuals can't. At what point, and how do you fight this? How do you change this? How do you push back? Now, we've been getting this question a lot. And I think this is a great pivot point. In a case where the team is not performing the way you want, you either get rid of the coach or you get new players. And I think we need to focus on new players. There are many people out there who may hear this podcast that have the capability and the ability to actually run for public office.
Yeah.
I think you need to consider it. It.
Tell these guys, because I don't think we've dove into this before, but Bobby ran for county commissioner in Georgia in a really tough district. But what was your experience? Because we talk overall, there's a lot of different ways to get involved. The way I originally chose to get involved was to start a PAC, which was Veterans for Responsible Leadership, and I started it in 2017. And I can tell you all about that. And a large part of me thinks that a large part of my experience running a PAC was, man, there is a lot of money in politics, and it's a problem and all that stuff. You chose a very different way to enter, in which you actually just, did the ballsy thing and threw your hat in the ring. And so what was that like? You got out of the Navy. Tell us about that. What happened?
Yeah. So I got out the Navy. My last day was September 30th, 2023. And, I still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But, I was helping out with the local high school down here, and I ran into the county head of the Democrats down here in Fayette County, Georgia. And let me tell you something. I had no intentions or thoughts of running, especially where I live, because there had never been a Democratic challenger. The only time that there was even a challenge in the election in our county, in this section of the county, was the Republican primary. That's how red it's been ever since the seat was created, like 35 years ago, whatever. So when they pulled me aside and explained that to me, they were like, we need someone to at least try to compete. I was like, well, I know there's probably no way I'm going to win. However, I believe that a democracy, a constitutional republic is what we have. You have to have people competing for the seat. You have to, right? And so I had to go cut a little check for about like $800 or $900, whatever, to register and this, that, and the other.
What was your? I want to dive a little because maybe someone's listening to this and they're really like, what did you do? Like, how did you go to town hall? Like, I mean, how does one get started to run for office?
So what you do is you here in the state of Georgia, but it's pretty similar everywhere. You have to fill out a declaration form where they ask you, they like, who are you? Where do you live? First thing is verify that you live and are eligible to be running in office in the district or wherever that you're running. And then, employment history a little bit, I think. And then, making sure that you're not, a foreign agent, basically. Make sure you're not getting any money from overseas, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And
do you have any hotels from Moscow that you run?
No, I do not, unfortunately. I heard that's a good revenue source.
Yeah,
so no, I didn't. So then what happens is, in Georgia and a lot of places, your party chair, because the two major parties will submit this to the board of electors, both locally and in the state of Georgia. And you got to make sure you sign something saying you'll abide by all the rules, et cetera, et cetera. Then you immediately, in our case, you want to start raising funds, and then you have to report like every month, a list of the donors that support you and this, that, and the other, and the amount they give, and they're limited based on the race on how much they can give. But most importantly, you immediately register. Once they confirm, yes, you're a viable candidate, it's put into the state record, it's put into the county record, etc. Now it's time to start campaigning. Now, what's interesting to me is in this era of campaigning, you can instantaneously hit people because of the electronic space that we operate in now.
How far in advance did you decide to run? So the election's in November. What was it? November 24?
Yeah, it was November 24. And I want to say February, March of 24. Okay. Now, granted, local election, much smaller, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
For those who are running for representative, members of Congress, Senate, it's going to be a full year out, right? Now, what's interesting to me, this is why I think people should look into running locally. Your good political leaders, I don't care if they're in DC, they will reach down to the local level. Part of how we have seen the landscape politically change is because back in the 80s, Ronald Reagan and the Republicans, William F. Buckley, the new conservative movement, they knew we need to dominate local elections and local state houses. Why? Because then it led to the gerrymandering of districts that you see now. Depending on where you live, your vote may count more or less than someone else's because of gerrymandering. Now, historically speaking, African Americans' votes are about 0.7, 75% of what white votes are based on gerrymandering. And you saw in the Supreme Court, Alabama was up here recently, North Carolina. It's amazing how it's happening. It keeps happening in the Deep South, but the gerrymandering is powerful, and it's powerful on both sides, to be honest, if you're being completely objective about it. However, local government has become more pronounced in what's happening until right now. Trump is overreaching with federal authority left and right. But the last 20 years of American politics, it's been local government driven. The governors of the state that you live in have affected your lives more than the federal government. And so what you'll see is state parties will reach all the way down to the local, county, municipality, and city level to engage. Now, in the state of Georgia, because we're one of those 2 or 3 major swing states now, we're a purple state. It was interesting to see the dynamic. I'm running for Little Fayette County, whatchamacallit. And to be honest, the Democratic Party of Georgia, DPG, really wasn't involved that much in us. Even though we were one of 3 counties, your boy Steve Karnacki actually pointed to in our election, said, Fayette County is a swing county. This is an important county. And this is where I get on the Democrats for not seeing the bigger picture strategically. They were more interested in the House races and the Senate, right? So depending on where you are, local elections, you may or may not get top down support, which is good because it's good and bad. It's good because you know that you're going to be focused on the issues, and the people that support you are strictly grassroots. They're local. They care. They're engaged. But you will not have the huge machine in fundraising. You will not have the huge machine and doctrine and political speech and help that, a House candidate or a Senate candidate may have. And, the more I moved away from that election, and I outperformed by any metric. People, you can ask ChatGPT, I outperformed. You will see that the national groups, RNC, DNC, very rarely focuses in on what you and your neighborhood care about. They're too busy fighting the broad strokes. And so it's left for state and local to fight it out. And, part of me is like, okay, that's good. But part of me also realizes that our national political bodies, Democrat and Republicans, have lost touch with what Americans actually want. And more importantly, they try to tell Americans what they should feel and want. That's not how it's supposed to work. So if you want to have actual change and effectiveness, go and do local office. Your school board, your county commissioners, and your city councils, those three bodies have more of an impact on your day-to-day lives and what your family goes through, the security of your family, the education of your family, the job opportunities, economic opportunities, more so than the state and federal.
Yeah.
It's just a fact.
I think that's right. I mean, we have some other VFRL members who are considered running for sort of local office as well. The impact, right? Number one, you're building a bench for future, office holding. But number two, I think you're right. I think those issues are sort of, it matters what the school superintendent, which school superintendent you hire. It matters where the zoning laws in your city, you can have, this was an interesting book, and I agree with large swaths of it, but the Ezra Klein book, Abundance, where he talks about how Democrats need a new abundance agenda where we're building housing, we're for, yes, in my backyard. That requires being one of the decision makers at a local level, right? If you want to have new housing built in your community, so this generation of kids now, these 18, 19, up to, 30-year-olds who are entering the workforce and can't afford $1 million for like a 3-bedroom house, right? We have to build for these people. And that requires kind of reshaping zoning laws and these sorts of things. So it's a really low barrier of entry relative to, a Senate campaign or something like that. And it can have a major, major impact.
I completely, before doing the research into what a county commissioner, at least in the state of Georgia, does, completely underestimated what they do. I mean, you talk about taxes, they set the millage rate, they set the taxes, they set how much money your your Board of Education gets to deal with. So you're talking about you want to build a new school or you want to improve, that goes through them. Period. If you want to build an extension on your house and it's a certain size, they the ones that say you can or can't do it. If you, let's say you're lucky enough to have 10 acres of land and you want to split off 2 to give to your kids or something like that, you got to go through them. I mean, it is the day-to-day lives and the day-to-day things that we see are dealt with by people that you run into the grocery store or the Waffle House seeing, man. And here's the thing. I say that because there's someone out there listening that could be that person, that should be that person. And they are, they got to get over the intimidation of public office, blah, blah, blah. Public office was meant to do exactly what it meant. It says to serve the public. You're a member of the public, period.
And I'll say this, and I remember having this conversation, sort of with you. You you never had, this was never an issue for you, but I'll remember the conversation, and I've had it with many people who are sort of like, man, I want to speak out. I want to involved. I want to do something, but I'm kind of like, I don't really want to be public. And I'm like, what happened when I did that first Lincoln Project video that got, million views or whatever? It changed my life. Nothing, literally nothing whatsoever. Right. Still, it didn't result in any negative consequences for me. I mean, they're like, yeah, people like say mean, back to our previous discussion, people say mean stuff online, but like, that's part of what, the other side counts on. They count on you being compliant in advance, being scared to speak out, and being scared to run for school board because you live in a red state, right? Like, fascism, authoritarianism, it works on people just being intimidated. And then you speak out and you're like, oh, actually, it's fine.
Right. Right. Exactly. And the final thing I'll say about it too is, be the change that you want to see. If you don't like the policies that are happening in your neck of the woods, straight up be like, you know what? We can do better. Hell, I can do better. This is some bullshit. What are we trying to do? And here's the thing that blew my mind, even when I was running. And my opponent, a good man, politically some checker, but at his core is a good man, right? Me and him got along famously. And I've helped him even post-election because that's what society does. Where you can help, you go and help. That's why I wanted to move back home to Fayette County, Georgia, because these people are good people. We all have different political views. But I know for a fact if one of my neighbors is in trouble, I'm going to help, whether it's the guy I ran against or whatever. And you may be the missing piece to your society becoming great. Because of your life experience, because of what you've seen, this, that, and other. Look, dude, I'm a retired naval officer. I'm a sailor. I'm like, I don't know. But when I realized as I started running for office, you go to all these different countries, you see the different ways they do business and how they run their society. Like, man, we could do that here. Only difference is we do A, B, C, and D, but the concept is sound, right? That's the type of thing that each one of you, your life experience brings. When you talk about diversity, it's diversity of thought and experience. That's what you bring to the table.
Yeah. Guys, reach out to us. We'll, if you're interested in running for local office, reach out to Veterans for Responsible Leadership or even to the podcast, and we'll try to help you, put you in touch. Even if you just want to learn more about the process and you haven't made up your mind yet, there's a lot of good that can come out of it. And I think people talk themselves out of it by sort of becoming, being intimidated by consequences that they think could happen, when in actuality, my experience being a semi-public figure in this space was that there were no bad consequences besides people, call me a libtard online. And, who cares, right? Like, who cares?
Wow.
And, so I think that's a great way to end it. Bobby, I appreciate you sharing your experience. Who you got in the NBA finals, man?
Real quick, I think it's Oklahoma City, man. As much as I like what Indiana's done, Oklahoma City, when they traded away 3 MVPs, basically, in Durant and Westbrook and Harden, everybody laughed at them. Well, they got a lot of first-round picks, and they are deep, and they're long, and they're rangy, and most importantly, they're hungry. They're really, really hungry. And I think they've gone through the process, the hero's journey of losing in the playoffs and losing in the Western Conference Finals. Now it's time to finish this thing off. So we'll see what happens.
I'm going Pacers, man. Yeah. I think that this is the year for the Pacers to finally, and OKC is great. I've got nothing against them. They're incredibly talented. SGA is amazing. But I think the Pacers play a little more team ball, and he's a little bit more star oriented. So I don't know. It'll be good. I'm probably wrong, but I'm picking the Pace.
We'll see, man. We'll see.
Sounds good. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.